Thank you, thank you. Wow. Thank you. Gosh, there's so much emotion right now, right here, going on tonight. Kim, is this good? A little bit more? Okay. Right there? Okay, perfect. So great. I tell you what, I am so grateful to Kim for tonight and just all that this ministry does for people in this community. It's amazing. So many great emotions as well because I am at my brother's church. And for the first time, I am on this side of the stage. and I have to say kudos to Kim for being the first one. You beat Naeem to putting me on the stage, so that's just amazing. Oh, thank you. So thank you for laughing at that joke because that was the only planned joke I had for tonight, so thank you. But isn't it interesting? It's so interesting that to be here tonight and to share the story that I have for you. And it's crazy because in all my years, I never thought that this would be my story to share in all my years. And maybe tonight, you are in a place in your life where you're just wondering that how am I in this season? How did I get here? Because maybe you didn't think that this would be your story or this would be your season tonight. And so I want to remind you that you are not alone, that we're in this together. So just a little bit of background about me. Dominique had mentioned a little bit about how I was born and raised in Kuwait as a Muslim, and we lived in, I would say, a pretty conservative Muslim home. We followed a lot of the Muslim principles of what we had to do to be good Muslims. And so tonight, actually, I don't have a lot of time to go into my testimony of how I came to Jesus, because that in itself is such a beautiful, amazing story. But tonight I'm going to focus on what God did in my life sort of after. So maybe in some way it'll relate to what my life used to be. So I came to faith in Jesus just through a really amazing experience. God just met me in a place of so much confusion in my life. I was just kind of so doubted who God really was just because I came from a Muslim background and then just heard of God's amazing redeeming love through Jesus. And so just came to faith in Jesus. And I was one of those people that when I came to faith in Jesus, it was something that completely shifted my life. I would say that my life was pretty empty before I received Jesus. And so when I received Jesus into my life and had him, when I came to faith in him, it completely filled me. And when I say that it completely filled me, I just fell in love with this newfound God in my life. And I was one of those people that wanted to do it all. I wanted to learn more about God. I wanted to read the scriptures. I wanted to experience him more and more because it was something that I had never experienced before. At 17, 18, I had decided that I was going to wait on God to show me who he had in my life and what his plans were for my life, because I couldn't wait for someone to tell me what God's plans were. I knew that they were amazing because of how supernaturally God had come into my life. Just a random Muslim girl from Kuwait had found Jesus. So I knew that his plans for my life were great, because his word and who he was told me that his plans for me were good. And so I started to pursue this life in Jesus. In the midst of that, I fell in love with this Pakistani Christian, which was really amazing because there were no Pakistani Christians in America. And so we fell in love, and we got married, and we always knew that God had a great plan for our life. We, a couple of years into our marriage, we had a child, and just as soon as she was born, we just knew that we wanted to raise her in the ways of God. We got plugged into a church that helped shape our faith and got plugged in, and we were one of those families that wanted to do it all. We hosted dinners at our home. We had youth group. We were one of those people that always had people over at the house. Just anything the church was doing, we were going to be involved in because we just believed so much in the good work of Jesus that we didn't want to miss anything. Jenna was little. When we would volunteer, she would go with us. It was just the way that we wanted to raise her, to teach her the things of God and to live it out and just to, experience all that he had. I remember one Sunday in the church that we were involved in, there was a man that had been in a wheelchair for years. And that particular Sunday, we had a speaker that came and was praying for healing for people. And I remember sitting in the church, and Ernest was to my left, and Jenna was to my right, and they prayed for this man. And he got up and started walking. And I remember in that moment thinking that my daughter got to experience this. How amazing. How amazing that she got to see the things that God can do in our life. A couple years after that, we had a second daughter, Layla. And so Layla was 7 months, and it was just a random Sunday that we were in church, Jenna and I, and my husband, Ernest, had not been feeling really well. He had been in and out of the doctor's office trying to figure out what was going on. We thought it was maybe a sinus infection, and he had some trouble with his heart, a couple years before that, but he was doing well. And that particular Sunday, we went to church and came home. The next morning, I went to work like I would normally go, and Ernest started to feel really bad that day, and in the middle of feeling really bad, just very unexpectedly, his heart stopped. And my husband of 10 years passed. And I just remember that feeling like everything had stopped at that moment, not just his heart, but all of it. It didn't make sense what had happened. I felt like a lot of things died in that moment. But I knew God was good, but I didn't understand how this was happening. I didn't understand why all these amazing dreams and visions that we had for our lives all of a sudden just changed. It didn't make sense. So much change in our life that year. And in about a week's time, we ended up moving to my sisters because it was just me and the girls and my mom, and so we ended up moving to Myrtle Beach, and that's where we are now. And just everything changed. Nothing was familiar. People were not familiar. Family was, but everything else had changed. There was no familiar emotion either for me. But I decided that I was going to take one step at a time and try to figure this out. I just went into like mom mode, for maybe some of you moms might be able to understand, because my daughters were 7 and 7 months. And so I just knew that my daughters needed me, my little baby needed me as, a mom just for 7 months. She still hadn't been sleeping through the night. And I remember deciding that I would just, take one step and just wake up in the morning and get them what they needed. It was a very, very hard year, but you know what? Our family was with us the entire time. I realized in that moment how much our family truly loved us. I realized in that moment how much our friends in our community, the community that we were plugged in, how much they loved us. I just remember people just sort of rallying for us to, coming to visit us 3 hours away just because they loved us and bringing us things and all of that. And, I think of that season in my life, and I think of all that went on and all of that. And I remember having this conversation with my daughter. Actually, she had a thing at school that she needed to dress up like a superhero, and so we were talking about what she needed to dress up like. And so I said, "Hey, Jenna, so what do you think you're going to do?" And so she said, Mom, I think I'm going to dress up like you. And I remember thinking, man, this is great, right? This is amazing. But when I went to bed that night, I realized how much what she said really bothered me, because I felt like if I had done anything, I felt like I had wrecked her life. Because I felt like I had lived this life and maybe given her this image of a God who is so great, who does amazing things, that is able, by his power, people can stand up and walk and do all those great things and all those amazing things that God can do. But why were we in this place that we were? I remember thinking about all those times that, when Ernest and I were involved in the church, we were the couple that wanted to meet all the new people, and we couldn't wait till we met them and, had them over at our house and all those things. And now my life had changed into something that was just not familiar. I was the mom who didn't want to go to things anymore. I was the mom that hid in the back because I didn't want anybody to ask me who we are or why we're in Myrtle Beach. But see, God reminded me in that moment, and he said that, you know what, Atiya? You showed up. You showed up broken. You showed up scared. And maybe sometimes, being a superhero to somebody doesn't mean that you show up shiny and pretty. Maybe all it means is just getting up, taking a shower, taking your daughter to school. Maybe that's what it's all about. God, in his amazingness at that moment, I just remember thinking, I have no friends, I have no community or any of this, but people held us up in prayers, and people, I had a small group leader from our church who constantly texted me all the time, just praying for us and lifting us up. And so those things allowed me to keep standing. Was family, was friends. And so, it's funny, I get asked a lot in this season that, how do you have so much hope? How do you keep going? How come you seem like you have all this strength and all this hope, and, where does this courage come from? And so I started to think about it. I started to think about hope. And it's amazing how much great things that have been said about hope in scriptures by people. But see, I think that hope is best defined by our own experiences. When we go through those trials to see what our experience is. And so for me, hope is knowing deep, deep down in my soul that God is for me. That his love for me is so big and so deep. Hope for me is just knowing that God is able to walk into a room and he can comfort, and his presence is oh so real, so real. So I'm going to say that what I know of God and what I know of hope is that God is the same in your great mountaintop experiences, and he's the same God in the valley of where you don't know where you're going. Actually, I think that it's extra good when you can't get it together. It's extra good when you can't get it together. So I just wanted to remind you of that. I wanted to share this one scripture with you. There's so many good ones, but there is one. It's in Psalms, and God's speaking this for David, and he says, it's in Psalms 89, verse 33. He says, I will not take my love from him, nor will I ever betray my faithfulness. I will not violate my covenant or alter what my lips have said. See, that is hope. Because I know without a doubt that God does not change his mind. He doesn't change his mind if I show up. He doesn't change his mind if I don't. He gives you, his love is enough for you to not have it together. And see, I needed to remind myself of that because I came from such a strong background with pursuing God's love and knowing what he was capable of doing. I had to remind myself that there's no pressure on God's side for you to get it together. Because you can decide today that you can stand up, and then tomorrow, if you can't, you can just sit back down, and that's okay. He is not going to change his mind because his word says that he does not alter what his lips have said. It's for every season of your life. And so tonight, I just want to give you a little bit of encouragement on that. And, the girls and I have a long journey ahead of us. But in the midst of all this, that we might feel like we're suddenly alone, but quite honestly, we're not. God has been there. He will continue to be there through all the days, the good days, the hard days. Thank you for your time tonight, guys.